So what if the thing that makes you great today is the very thing holding you back tomorrow? That's a dilemma facing legacy businesses everywhere, especially those built on heavy infrastructure, fixed systems, and a proudly operational mindset. Now in this episode, we're joined once again by Ian from LeShuttle, the subterranean railway service between the UK and France that carries millions of people and their cars, their vans, their coaches, their motorbikes through the Channel Tunnel each year. Our last conversation with Ian was about how LeShuttle developed its customer experience vision. But this time, we want to go deeper because visions are relatively easy compared to the heavy lifting of making them real inside a 30-year-old operation that runs 24/7 and never gets a chance to stop and start again. So in this episode, we're talking about how Ian's turned strategy into visible progress and what it means to make projects ready to start. How phase transformation works when you can't shut the doors, and why sometimes just moving the toilets sends a bigger signal than rewriting the brand book. This is a conversation about traction, belief, and the art of delivery where everything around you is built to resist change. My name's Oliver King, and this is CXD, the podcast where we explore the art and science of reimagining and delivering customer experiences. Ian, it's great to have you back. How have things been with you, sir?
Yeah, really good, thank you. And thank you for inviting me back. Really looking forward to another conversation.
Fantastic. So now the last episode really struck a chord. It's actually one of our most listened to, in fact. And I think the thing that landed was how clearly you laid out the vision for LeShuttle and how honest you were about the reality of delivering it. Because that's where most organisations tend to get stuck. They create a vision and then it sits in a slide deck. You know, it's well intentioned, but it rarely shapes what actually gets done. But at LeShuttle, that feels very different. You know, you didn't just publish a vision, you made it something people could really use. So let's start there. What did you do to make sure the vision stuck, and how is it now influencing decisions across the business?
Yeah, so I think I was really conscious at the start of not creating a vision that just sat in a presentation, sat in a folder somewhere that never got delivered. I think what we wanted to do, and we were really conscious of this when we started the work with Engine and creating that vision, is that we bring people on the journey with us. We wanted not just to turn up at the end and go, and here's the vision, now it's time to deliver it. What we wanted to do was work with the people who, you know, on a daily basis are interacting with customers. They're understanding the challenges of customers, challenges of staff as well in delivering that. So we basically, in effect, co-created it. So all those people from exec level to, you know, for the people on the ground were part of that work. They're part of workshops. They understood the journey that we were going on to create that vision. So when we then got to the end and had created it, they knew it was coming. They were almost asking us, when's it going to be delivered? So they were already bought into it. And I think one of the reasons for that is LeShuttle, you know, yes, it's a 31-year-old organization, but it has some really passionate people who, they're not just people going, well, we don't want to change. They actually want it to change. They want this spirit experience to be improved and so all these things they've seen in the vision to be delivered. So because of that, because of being part of it at the start, and also the type of people we have as within a business, they were really passionate about then making it happen.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I had this image in my mind of, you know, one of the advantages of one of the sort of traction advantages of co-creating a vision with the business is then you have the whole business nipping at your heels to make sure this thing actually gets done, which is a great way of ensuring that it actually gets done. Not only that it's the right thing to do, but actually you then, you know, you hold yourself accountable for delivering that for them. So what's the one thing that every legacy business needs to stop doing if they want to move forward?
So I think it touched on that point we just said, really, is it's almost hard to start. The hardest thing is starting, because actually you have so many things to get in place, to get people aligned, to get everyone's input for it. But actually, if you start, then you can build momentum. So starting the process, starting the project can enable you to then build the momentum for the future phases.
So just don't hesitate, just get on with it. That's the important thing.
Exactly.
Once you step over that start line, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously there are, you know, we're talking about the design process here. From a build perspective, our teams rigorously follow the REBA process and all the elements that come with that. But actually, by doing a piece up front, you can start quickly. And I think you can spend a lot of time overthinking what should we do first, but actually just start it.
Yeah, and that overthinking can really lead to a lot of indecision and
Yeah.
a lot of things arriving to market too late. They've been overthought. There's been hesitation. The market's moved on. Technology has even moved on, and you're suddenly behind again when you set out to try to get in front.
Yeah, and we're lucky that our business has enabled us to move quickly because the decision making process, the size of teams we have are quite small, so we haven't had to go through huge teams and decision to make those decisions. We're able to make the decisions quickly as a core team.
Got it. Okay. So once you've got the projects, in a place where they're genuinely ready to go, the next challenge is delivering them, and you're doing that right in this live environment. It's like you're trying to service a car engine without turning the engine off, and that strikes me as where the phased approach you've been talking about is so interesting, because rather than pushing for a single kind of all-in-one transformation, as you say, you're breaking it down into bite-sized chunks, more fundable chunks, and they in turn add up to something much, much bigger. So tell me more about that approach. How did you go about breaking the work into phases? What were the sort of criteria that helped you kind of strike the right balance between a long-term ambition and something you could feasibly do day to day?
Yeah, so this was a real learning for me coming out of the vision phase. So I think I was really focused on that big end vision, but actually people need to see change quickly. And that's not just customers, it's also internally as well. They've worked on a vision, they've seen it, they want to see that change to keep that momentum going. So what we started to look at was how do we break it down? Because we need to be delivering a change almost when every time a customer travels, they should see the improvement that we're making. So what we start to look at was, I guess, priority. So within our list of projects and, coming out of the vision, there was a lot. What's going to have the biggest impact? And I think what we looked at was we'd done a lot on creating a new LeShuttle brand. We'd created a new digital experience. We've got a new customer engagement program. But then the first thing a customer sees on the day needs to reflect that brand that they've seen. So looking at the checking, looking at the first interactions a customer has on site was quite easy to prioritize that. I think moving from that, I guess feasibility. You mentioned it's a live site. We have millions of customers traveling. We can't stop the service. So what we need to do is look at what is the most feasible way to, I guess, start to deliver this change. And I guess the final part of this was budget. It's money makes things happen. So what we wanted to do was look at where we could get the biggest return from the budget we had available, and how we could then phase that over future years. So I think that enabled us to, one, break down some these bigger pieces that we had to deliver, but also within that, what are the things we can start to deliver almost immediately to see that, so that change can be seen.
And was that an easy process to go through, or were there still sort of almost judgments you had to make? Two things appear to be equally important. Which do we go forward with?
Yeah, I think there are, also we've got two locations. We've got the UK and France. So we're also balancing the work between two countries and two separate sites. So I think there's always going to be compromise, and we continually make that compromise. But in addition to that, there's also new projects coming in all the time. We're a travel business. Regulations are changing. There are many different things that we keep having to adapt to. So even though we've set that priority, I guess the challenge, more of a challenge now, is how do you keep adapting? How do you keep being aware of other projects and how they're going to interlink with it? So I think rather than it being a challenge in terms of that early prioritization, it's more of a challenge as to how do you keep all the other things that keep coming up, not interrupting what you're doing, but also working together.
That's a real discipline, isn't it? Because I was going to say, when people kind of get into the detail, okay, we're now doing this thing, this smaller project. Yeah. How do you keep for them the bigger picture in mind when they're building it one piece at a time?
I guess we all know what that bigger picture is, so they can see that what we're doing is building up to that. I guess it's almost like it's a puzzle, isn't it? We're putting the parts of the puzzle together to get to that end state. So I think because we've of the design work we've done, everyone's aware of that vision. They've seen the images, the video, and they know where we're trying to get to. So I think that's in everyone's mind. It's certainly in my mind. And so each step we're making is a step towards that.
So when you've got you figured out what the projects are, you've got them moving and they're moving ahead in the right order. Um, what what's striking to me is kind of how it seems they're being approached. Design thinking is still pretty rare in an infrastructure-led environment. But Ian, you've made it very central, not just in how things look, but how problems are framed, how costs are scoped, how decisions are made. What does that design mindset look like in practice at LeShuttle? And what kind of impact has it had on the way your teams and your stakeholders now work together?
So I think it comes back to one of the points we mentioned early on, which is how do you start? Well, it's very hard to start unless you know what you're trying to do and where you're trying to get to. So one of the reasons it's worked well, and coming out of the vision stage, we looked at many different ways of doing this, and if I'm honest, a lot of them look quite long. They looked long processes, arduous processes, and we'd lose the momentum and the speed that we'd created in the previous phase. So by taking this approach, and this approach works by having great partners and and great people internally who are embracing this. And we were lucky that the partners we've gone with were up for working in this way. They actually quite enjoyed it. Weekly design sprints, weekly reviews, getting feedback immediately was they were able to adapt and work in that way. But one of the reasons that was possible was because we'd done all the upfront work. The architects and the people and those teams, they got given a brief from Engine, whereas with Engine we started with a blank sheet of paper, whereas we're now going into the design phase with understanding who our customer is, what are the key products and services we want to offer, what's that potential experience going to be, and that enabled us probably to hit the ground running in that phase. In terms of what it's meant from people internally, I think we know much better what we're doing. We're able to see how projects interlink, and they can work together, and we're able to, I guess, know what we want and get that cost certainty a bit sooner than probably I thought we would do, and maybe it looked like we would do.
Did you get the sense that perhaps thinking of your partners, the architects, the developers, etc., do you get a sense that the way you were approaching it with this sort of experience master plan was something that was unusual, that they hadn't maybe come across before with other clients?
I don't know. I think I'm not sure about that, but I think one of the things that maybe was the amount of insight that they got given, all the customer research that enabled them to do that. I'm sure there are many that work in that similar way, but I think with us there was so much we needed to do and so many different projects. There was quite a lot that needed to be done in that upfront piece. So I don't know. I'm not sure whether that's very different to how they all worked previously.
I'm just interested to what
Yeah.
begins to change when when teams start thinking more like designers. When I say designers, what I mean is that sort of that customer centered approach, that pragmatism, that desire to sort of test and iterate and refine, and and what effect that has on the projects and how you're approaching things.
I think probably the thing that was different was the speed and the feedback loop. So it wasn't like they'd go away and work for 3 months and come back and present. It was weekly meetings, feeding back, working these problems out together, because there are many information we can give them, but when you're designing in a physical experience that has been there for a long time, there's other constraints that are going to come out in that process, and particularly in two different locations. So what that enabled us to do actually was, with the feedback from wider teams internally, was when we then presented it to most senior stakeholders, we'd already gone through lots of that thought process. We'd identified probably some of the things that would come up. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Why won't that work? we'd gone through that process as a core team together. So the end point we got to was much easier to then explain, because we'd probably discounted lots of the potential routes we could take to land on the solution that we did.
Yeah. And that's critical, because you need to sort of answer those questions, particularly with the exec, for them to make sure that you've covered all the angles and figured it out. So that's a critical approach. So let's talk about pace. What's really interesting here is how you've brought these sort of agile digital ways of working into a very physical world. And as we know, agile is not just about apps anymore. It's about applying it to infrastructure, as you've done with architects, surveyors, project managers. But that isn't particularly commonplace in our experience. But you've made it work, which is incredible. So what helped you to bring that sort of sprint-based, iterative way of working into the process, and how did the business and the partners respond to that amount of pace? Was it common for them?
So I guess a lot of what I do is still digital as well. So I guess there's still a lot of what I'm doing is still the digital experience. It's the using technology to change that experience. But in this sense, I think yes, they were definitely up for it. I think in terms of how we'd approach it, they quite enjoyed working at that speed. They enjoyed getting the feedback as quickly as we were giving them, and being challenged probably as much as we were challenging them. I think what the proof in that is the end result. We were able to go through those processes much quicker than they probably normally do. We probably put a lot of pressure on them to do that. But we had a goal of trying to get to the point where we could begin the tenders and the construction piece as soon as possible. I would say at that point, though, that's when it obviously hits very much a traditional process, because it's building, it's a construction element. They've rigorously followed the REBA process, and so I think the first bit they were very adaptable, and then it goes more to much a traditional approach when they go to that area.
So it creates that bridge, moving from that strategic piece through into the specification and translating that into a build program, and then it becomes more traditional.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and did you find that way of working shaped sort of, I'm going to say, like, a culture or behaviors? Did it build a different type of team?
It built a team that I'm probably more used to in the digital world. So, with one or two key stakeholders, the project management team, the technical team, and they're the designers. So for me, it was quite a way I'm used to working previously. So I enjoyed it, and basically transitioning from how we'd worked with Engine in the vision into that was even though there was a gap in between while we worked out the best way of doing it, actually it continued in quite a similar way. And I think one of the things that the architects did really well was they worked with Engine as well. They got all that insight. They spent time with your team to understand how they got there. They worked with the brand agency to understand how they'd created the brand and what were the key principles that sit behind it. So, and they spent a lot of time on site. And I think this was really important, was we needed a partner who was not going to be miles away. We needed someone to really understand the experience, to travel, to see on a busy day how it completely changes to a quiet day and how they need to factor that in. So I think that real close collaboration was the thing that worked really well.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and living that experience and seeing that experience firsthand is absolutely critical. Otherwise, it becomes very abstracted. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about how we deliver things and the governance of the project and that kind of thing. But underneath it all, there seems that there's a deeper shift. In many operational businesses, it's really easy for the customer to end up somewhat abstracted. They're not a customer, not a human. They're a vehicle or a number. They're a flow that kind of gets managed. But you work really hard to change that, to make the customer much more visible again, and to put their needs back at the center of how things go about getting designed and delivered. But how did that shift begin? And how are you using customer insight now to shape decisions across the business?
Yeah, so I guess it's not necessarily that a customer got forgotten. It's probably understanding who that customer is. A customer changes over time, and I think that was one of the first things we did at the start of the vision bit was to almost change people's view of who our customer is, to speak to 4,000 customers, to understand who they are, to understand their different stress points in the journey. And I think what we did was we probably brought more to the front of it, to the front of all projects, who that customer is and what their needs are. And I think that then the work we did on personas and customers then fed into all other projects. So our brand, our customer engagement program, obviously the digital experience, and obviously the physical. It's all built around those customer personas. So I think what we've done is we've made them more prominent so that people understand all our customer types, not necessarily just the one who's the most vocal on a
Yeah,
day.
yeah, of course. But you briefly mentioned it there, but I just want to call it out. But you interviewed over 4,000 customers for this work, which is a
Yeah.
lot.
It is, and in different ways, face to face, we did surveys, we video customers, and I think it was, we have there's very different types of people who travel with us, and they're different on different days. So if you're traveling with your family versus traveling with a friend, you want something different. So I think it's not just around identifying those people; it's also how that changes based on who they're traveling and what time of year they're traveling as well. So within that, there are many different things that we have to hit and cater for within that experience.
Was that very revealing to the business? Were there things coming out which were completely new, or was it just giving nuance to something?
I think there are certain new things, and our customers obviously changed over a 30-year period, and it very much so in the last 3 to 5 years. So, yeah, I think their needs and catering for different needs, I think, is really important. We talk about pets. It's a huge part of our business. We can have over 2,000 pets traveling on a single day. You need to cater for that. That's very different to catering for two people traveling together or families. So, when we look at what we're changing the experience, yes, we're doing some big things, but there are certain facilities that those people are going to need at each stage of the journey, and that's very different. And identifying what their needs are versus other people.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I've noticed that as well in some of the aviation work that we do. So it feels like in the UK, it's not that common to see pets traveling through airports, but in the States, in Canada, it's very, very common. And you do notice all these facilities set out there to exercise your pets for pet toilets, etc., etc. So yeah, the whole other world you need to get right. If the pet's happy, then the owner's happy, which is what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You've been really, when you're playing this long game, belief matters, doesn't it? And a belief really comes from what people can see, what they can feel, and point to. And you've embraced that idea, making that invisible journey more visible. But what are some of the early changes you made that helped build that belief, do you think? And how have you kept that sense of momentum as the bigger phases unfolded in the work?
Yeah, well, it's almost splitting into two separate work streams, isn't it? It's those continuous things that you're almost releasing quite regularly that are improving things, or you identify things that need to be improved, versus also keeping a mind on where you're going in the long term. You know, some really simple things around, we spoke around pet facilities and children facilities. Those things are really important. Every customer will probably use toilet facilities. Those things need to be of the same standard that they expect when they travel with an airline. So we're delivering those small things, looking at what's going to make the experience easier. So wayfinding, signage, the information a customer gets at each point. So we're slowly improving those elements. But also they fit into where we're going in the future. But I think you need to show that improvement, because you can't wait for that experience to, for that customer to wait 5 years for it to happen. I think what we wanted to do was, ultimately, this is about creating a better experience so that those new customers come and travel with us, and secondly, existing customers keep coming back. So those customers are not going to wait 5 years for that to happen. We need to be showing that improvement, and we notice it. We see it in CSAT, we see it in the feedback from customers. When we do notice those changes, it improves. And I think, but we need to keep doing more ultimately, because there's the first step of it, and those customers' expectations will keep going higher.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing for speed, right? Because if you don't satisfy people now, if you're late to get there, by the time you get there, they'll want even more. So if there's someone listening and they have a vision for what they want to do, but they find themselves operating in a sort of a more of a legacy environment, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them to get started?
So it's what we just spoke around there. Really, it's break it up into things that you can deliver now. So don't lose sight of that long-term vision, but look at what you can deliver now, because a customer can't and shouldn't wait 5 years to see that change happening. They need to see it every time they travel, as does the business. So people within the business need to see that change. So yeah, so one thing, it's keep focused on the long-term vision, but keep delivering those things under it, because there's a reason you've created that vision, is because it's going to be transformational, but keep doing the small things that deliver towards it.
Brilliant. Ian, thank you. This has been an amazing conversation. As always, you've been really open about the reality of delivering transformation inside, a complex operational business. And there's a lot in here, and I know this will resonate with leaders who are listening who are facing similar challenges. So guys, if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow CXD and check out the show's notes for more on Ian's work, the LeShuttle journey, and some of the tools and ideas we touched on today. And if there's someone in your network trying to turn a bold customer-centric vision into reality, please share this episode with them. And we'll be back again soon with more conversations on the art and science of reimagining customer experiences.